Over the years in Celebration Circle, I've noticed that while we have a core community of folks who come frequently, the vast majority of folks who come to Circle come somewhat infrequently, but still contribute greatly simply by being present. And so it is, we have a visitor here this morning that I would like to acknowledge, who's come a number of times before, but always has something new to teach me every time he makes his appearance. His name is Stickman. Now, Stickman is more impressive than he might seem at first glance. You think, well, there's not much to Stickman. He's probably just another empty hat kind of a guy. But no. No, Stickman is a very complex dude. Because Stickman has a core brain called the reptilian brain. A brain that's probably 500 million years old. And Stickman, whether you know or not, is probably your cousin, probably your seventh cousin. Everybody in here is probably related. Matter of fact, looking around the room, yes, I'm certain everybody in this room is part of Stickman's family. And everybody in here, just like Stickman, has a 500 million year old brain called the reptilian brain, or actually more accurately called the fish face brain, because it first evolved almost certainly in primitive fish. And the thing about Stickman's fish brain, reptilian brain, is it's pretty rigid. It's not capable of much flexible thought. It's really capable of binary thinking. It thinks only, is that food or isn't it food? Is it danger or isn't it danger? Should I run or should I stay? Should I fight or should I hide? Reptilian brain only has those two options on almost any situation because it didn't have much in the way of resources. It only had this binary way of thinking to deal with its environment. Well, over a course of hundreds of millions of years, Stickman then developed a more complex brain that we call the paleo-mammalian brain, or the neocortex. It's substantially bigger and more complex, and rather than just being on or off switch, it's got multiple options because a mammalian brain, this is a paleo-mammalian brain, so these are the early mammals, the little mice and little shrews and moles. But they were mammals, so as mammals, they had what? Memories, which means that they now had to think about taking care of young. So with the neocortex, the paleo-mammalian brain, Stickman developed, and Stickwoman, of course, developed the ability to recognize others as more than just enemy or not enemy, food or not food. It recognized kin. It recognized not just food or not food, but also it remembered where food was last year at this time of year. It would hide food and could find it again. As a paleo-mammalian, it also started having sensations. It could feel good. It knew what felt good and what didn't feel good. It knew how to maximize pleasure and how to avoid pain. With somewhat simple but very effective strategies, paleo-mammalian brain also started giving rise to such things as what we now know as value judgments. It could weigh things, albeit at a relatively primitive level. And paleo-mammalian brain came to Stickman about 150 million years ago. And then lo and behold, about 2 or 3 million years ago, something wondrous happened. A really complex prefrontal cortex, or what we now think of as the human brain, was evolved, capable not just of strategies for optimizing pleasure and minimizing displeasure, for optimizing connection and clan building and family building and survival in that way, and finding value judgments. It also, this new human brain for the first time had the opportunity to project into the future, to think what we know as planning. Mammalian brain, or the neocortex, is responsible for imagination. It's responsible for also things like domination, because it allowed people to plan weapons, to plan strategies, plan for defending in advance, because it could remember the past and project into the future. Some people would argue, many philosophers are arguing, that we're now in the process of developing a fourth brain, or what we like to call a unitive consciousness, a brain that's not only capable of knowing me and you and them and planning for the future based on the past and strategizing, but able to see beyond logic and into the place of unity, into the place of oneness consciousness, into remembering, and into a place of being able to use intuition at a very powerful level, more powerful than the mere mammalian brain. But let's set that aside for a moment. Let's stay with Stickman where he is right now. Now, Stickman, where he is very, very confused on a regular basis. You know why? Because increasingly his environment, which had been evolving over millions of years to become ever more complex and capable of making more complex and wiser decisions, evolving consciousness, for those of us who believe in evolution. But Stickman increasingly is being bombarded with stimulation everywhere he goes, where Stickman was developed to live in the forest or in the field. Over time, he developed the capacity to farm, and she developed the capacity to make art. And the tribe of Stickman was able to deal with ever more complex environments. But in the space of less than 60 years, the amount of stimulation coming into Stickman's brain has been multiplying geometrically, so that on a given day, each one of us is faced on the order of something like 15,000 images asking us to buy something. Just that. Just the number of commercials that are coming at us liminally and subliminally, which is to say consciously and subconsciously. And subconsciousness mostly happens down here in the limbic brain. It's the paleo-mammalian brain. It was the brain of a mouse, basically, and it was designed to deal with mouse decisions, not big decisions. And mouse decisions were around a few grains in a little area defined by a few square yards, maybe 100 meters over the course of a lifetime. But suddenly, this little limbic system, this paleo-mammalian brain, is being flooded with ideas of what should and shouldn't be avoided, should and shouldn't be bought, should and shouldn't be feared. And this human brain, which has evolved for a higher consciousness, is being overwhelmed by limbic decisions about survival. Because it turns out that many of these messages from the consumer culture telling us to buy stuff have as their premise not only that you're not good enough without the things you're being earned to buy, that you will die without it. At some level, your brain interprets everything out there that you don't get to have as danger. Now, add a fearful lifestyle in which we're supposed to be scared every time we walk into an airport and take off our shoes and worry about terrorists all around us. Every time we turn on the television, we get more bad news about more people sneaking over our borders to kill us and take our valuables and rape our women and children. We are being flooded with more and more and more stress. When what all Stickman really wants to do is chill and think higher thoughts. Because that's what we've been evolving toward for a long time. So you say, well, that's all well and good, Rudi, but what's Stickman to do in a situation like this? Turns out there are two very powerful strategies, and I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to cover them. One is for Stickman to remember that he is, in fact, a fish and a snake and a reptile and a mouse and a squirrel and a higher ape and a being who wants nothing more than to feel her oneness with all of creation. And the fastest way to do that is to simply breathe consciously. Because it turns out that the moment you breathe consciously, these subconscious processes that run not just your heart and your liver and your lungs, but also your digestion, your fight or flight, all of those things, when you take conscious control of subconscious processes and tell yourself just to breathe, amazingly, you think higher thoughts and you slow down for a little while. And then Stickman comes right back up with his problems. There's always going to be more danger. There's always going to be more stimuli telling you to be afraid, and more reasons why we're not great again, and we're not going to be great again, and more reasons why we need Budweiser, General Motors, Toyota, McDonald's to feel better. But a breath says, I don't need anything but to be right here and breathe. And then the next step, beyond simply being present with the breath, for Stickman, seeking to come to peace with his environment and just feel the beauty and wonder of this moment, is to feel awe and wonder. Just to be. Just being is an amazingly powerful process. If I take this glass and fill it about like that, what's the first thing you think of? Is the glass half empty or half full? Yeah, but a more important question is, really important question is, where did that water come from? Oh yeah, it came from this carafe, sure. But where did that carafe of water come? Well, I filled it from the fountain over there. But where did the water in the fountain come from? Well, it came from the water plant. Yeah, where did that come from? Well, it came from the aquifer. Okay, but where did that come from? Where did water come from? Why is there water here? Where did it come from? If you do something as simple as stop and look at a glass of water in front of you with eyes of wonder and a willingness to ask big questions, and you have big thoughts rather than little rigid thoughts. I'll drink to that. At least that's my story. I'm sticking to it.